call to order the Utility Service Board meeting of Monday, May 8th. It's 5 o'clock by my clock, so we'll get started. First item on the agenda, we have two sets of minutes that we need to approve. So let's do the first one of April 24th. That was the regular business meeting. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes of that meeting? Jeff?
I have just one question. I think it's page 8 of the packet, but it's the second to last page of the big long minutes. And it says, the second to last sentence of that top paragraph, it says there was some talk of a ready-to-till wet trash collection, and I figured that was a typo because it wasn't a word that I recognized. But this was an important point that I had been thinking about in terms of why that is a program that's difficult to run. And I thought we were talking about curbside recycling when that was brought up, but I wasn't sure. So could we somehow get just maybe a correction of the minutes and also maybe a little information from staff on what the wet trash collection is and why it's difficult? That would be super helpful. But just in terms of the minutes, it's just the one word correction. Yeah, thank you.
And we can just get clarification on that through email if that would be okay. Perfect. Okay, thanks, Jeff. Are there any other, I'm glad to see people are reading the minutes. Any other corrections or changes? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Motion passes. And then the second set of minutes is also available from the April 27th bid opening, which I attended, and I looked over the minutes and everything looks right on that. So are there any other questions? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Right. Minutes pass. All right. We next are going to move to the approval of the claims. Our first is the standard invoices for a total of $437,309.36. Are there any questions on the standard invoices? Jeff?
The first one's at the top of page 2. The second chemtrade chemicals, it just has a typo in the 620 at 620. It should be like 11.703 or something like that. Anyway, if that's important to you all. And then on page 8, at the bottom, this Tyler Tech, it said for citizen transparency portal, and I thought to myself, am I supposed to know what that is? Because I'm not sure I know what that is. So if someone could help me out. Do you guys know what it is?
The U.S. enterprise.
That's a teleportal.
I'm guessing it.
I know Tyler's part of our system. They're the software company that we get from, but I'm not sure what that actual portal is.
Is that the portal that we as customers can go on to and get access to? It says something different. All right, well, if we could get an answer on that as well. Is there anything that prohibits us from passing it? Okay, so we'll just get some further clarification on that one. Are there any questions, Jeff? Anyone at this end? Okay, so is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Utility bills for $18,028.95. Is that, make sure I wrote down the right number here. That seems a little low. Okay, all right. Are there any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Wire transfers in the amount of $517,741.87. Any questions on the wire transfers? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Customer refunds for a total of $6,454.02. Are there any questions?
I had a
Yes.
question. Okay, so I'm sure this is just a coincidence, but I noticed there are like 3 construction companies on this one, and I just, since, I don't know, it just seemed to me like these are people we're doing other invoices with, and I just want to make sure that that's in the right spot.
Oh, yes, so the first one, the fiber underground, that was a high meter, so we charged the customer a $2,600 deposit, and then when they return the meter, then we just refund what's left from the water.
one as well.
Yeah, the Miller pipeline is the same thing. The other smaller ones, I'd have to look into,
Okay.
see why there's a final bill, but I do know those larger ones are the 100 meters.
Okay, thank you.
So should those have been recorded as hydrant meter refunds instead of refund credit after balance bill?
It would be clear, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Finally, we'll do the property tax bills. And those are in the amount of $17,386.32. This is a special check run. Are there any questions on this? Yes.
Yeah, these are the stormwater fees that we pay to the county.
Okay.
Yeah.
So but it's listed as property tax bills
Oh, where's that?
Stormwater fee tax.
on our approval of the claims, property tax
Oh,
bills.
Yeah, I think it was generalized to that, but yeah, just like we have a stormwater fee, the county has a stormwater fee, and we have lands in the county, so we pay them money for that.
Okay. My question on that, so if it is that, do we pay these twice a year?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Right, motion passes. Okay, there is just a very, very minor correction on the consent agenda. And it's just a typo. On the second one, it is supposed to say purchase and installation of a new air conditioner. The first one is a compressor, the second one is a conditioner. So just a little clear, that was brought to my attention right before the meeting started, so. So with that, I will turn it over to Kat.
Thank you. Good evening, Catherine Zager, Assistant Director, Environmental. I'm pleased to present the consent agenda to you this evening for agreements totaling $36,347, and which consists of the following items. Industrial Air Centers, Inc. for $22,047 for the purchase and installation of a new air compressor. Helfin Industries, Inc. for $14,300 for the purchase and installation of a new air conditioner. Would any board members like to pull any of these items from the consent agenda and discuss them individually?
Hearing none? All right.
Right. Hearing none, if,
But $36,000. And I don't remember, when I sat on the board, I don't remember getting notice of this before. In fact, I made so sure we did consent agendas while I was still on the board. But does the board members get this information already? So you already know what these two are in order to go to the consent agenda that could just be approved without anything else? I'm just asking. I don't know if anyone, because I don't know what it is. And I'm fine if you already know and you just put it on the consent agenda, but, okay, I just want to know if the
I
board knew.
believe they're in the more detailed packets that we go to on the
Yes.
drive.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're back. Okay, I don't go there, but.
Okay,
go ahead.
yes, no, we do see that,
And it's just because it's a lower amount,
right.
right?
Yeah, anything under 25,000 goes on the consent agenda, so that we don't
Well,
have
I
to,
got more questions about that too, but that's not for today.
okay,
I mean, consider just right off. You add that up at the end of the year, and, that's a lot of money. But that's neither here nor there, so, sorry.
no need to apologize. Okay, so there were no questions or the one question, and then Kat, they're approved, okay?
Okay. Hearing none, if there is no objection, then the consent agenda will be approved as presented. Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved as presented.
Great job. All right. Our next item is a request for an approval of the First Amendment to the agreement with Green Dragon Lawn Care, and that is James Hall.
James Hall, TV Assistant Director. We're doing an amendment for $3,300, $3,300 to include trimming that was originally left out Monroe water treatment plant. We have drying beds out there, and originally a lot of that grass was dead for years, and this year it has decided to come back. And so the plant would like us to include that as part of the of that contract. And what you're seeing is $150 every other, or for 22 weeks. So that's the additional $3,300 to include that.
Any questions on that? Yes, Molly.
It should be 33,700, I think, is what is in the packet. Or maybe I'm not reading this right.
3,300.
The old
less my
not to exceed and the new not to exceed.
Let's get my math out.
Yeah, 3,300 works.
You got it,
correct.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's $150.
Any other questions? Great. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Right, motion passes.
Thank you.
And then Jane, yep, there she is. Jane is up for the request for an approval of Resolution 2023-9. This is the bid rejection for conduit installation for Clear Creek Culvert Project.
Yeah, if you'll recall, we had to call a special meeting on April 27th to open bids for the conduit installation for Clear Creek Culvert Project. Unfortunately, those were well above the engineering estimates. We're not able to award that contract at this time. We are looking at alternative methods of installation for that. So we would like to have your resolution to reject the bid. So that
If anyone wants to, again, that was in the minutes, that information about the bids was in the minutes from the 27th meeting, so.
And I have those bids if you need, or the bid amounts if you're curious.
Well, the engineer's estimate came at basically 146,000, and then we had one that came in at 170,000, 481,000, and 463,000. There was a very big discrepancy, so.
What was the first discrepancy again?
The first one was 170,000 to our engineering estimate of about 146,000.
Yeah, it just seems to me that we've okayed a lot of projects where the discrepancy was in that direction. I mean, this doesn't seem like an inordinate difference to me.
Right. Unfortunately, that bidder was non-responsive. They did not acknowledge that they had received addendum number 1.
Okay.
So it's considered
All
a
right,
non-responsive
so there were
bid.
other reasons, but
Yes.
it is true that we accept bids that are above our estimates if everything else is okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Okay.
Great question. Anything else? Okay, so then, is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Jane, one just quick question. So I know you said we're going to look at some other methods. Are we,
We're looking at doing it with our own crews. James has been looking at whether they can squeeze that in very quickly this summer. This needs to happen in advance of the culvert project.
right.
So we're looking at materials right now and whether we can get a crew down there to get this installed in time for Duke to be able to pull their lines.
And if not,
We may have to postpone the project, or it could come in the winter months. We were looking at bidding the actual culvert project such that it starts construction into December, beginning of January. We could try to add this to that contract and bid it a little bit earlier, have that work done, but it's certainly not as convenient to the businesses
Right.
and to IU. So the effort was to get it done this summer.
okay, well, we appreciate the information. The next item is the request for approval for consulting services with Commonwealth Engineering. Do we have engineers? Do we have two actually on here? Or is it?
Two.
There are two,
They are
okay.
similar, and we will work on getting clarifying information moving
Okay.
forward on that. And I'll explain that difference here
All right.
now. Kevin White, Capital Projects Coordinator. Yeah, Phil Peden actually did a presentation to the engineering subcommittee a couple months ago regarding the need for sewer modeling at both of our Blucher and Dillman wastewater treatment plants. So both of these contracts are for consulting services related to the sewer modeling for both locations. The first one here is for the Dillman Interceptor and its west branch. And you'll notice that the cost on that is a little bit less than the cost of the Blucher Pool one. That is because part of that basin is going to actually be incorporated into another project, that sewer modeling that will be able to, Commonwealth will be able to use and access that. So that helped reduce that cost for that particular contract. It's really used just to identify the current capacity during wet flow, especially during wet flow times, and to see about future needs for the sewer system. We've got some undeveloped area, in particular in the Dillman West Branch, and we're hoping to use this study to determine where we have the need for future development to hopefully potentially cost share in their installations of the sewer needs. Is there any questions on the first one? First one pretty much goes from Weimer Road to Old 37 is the general area for the West Basin. Jeff, you look
I
like
do
you
have
got-
one question. You did mention the cost sharing. Who would we be cost sharing this with?
With the developers.
Okay, okay.
Potential developers. So when, we've added a substantial amount of beds, from what I understand, and sewer capacity requirements, and without knowing exactly where we need to make improvements, it's hard to tell developers, hey, this 12-inch pipe is not large enough for your development without having these studies done. Both of these studies will be a working document that we will be able to take ownership over and be able to update and continue to reference moving forward.
So this is modeling similar to what we did for the North Dunn area?
I'll revert to Phil on that because he was more
Phil did
involved.
speak to that last time, yes.
Yeah, Phil Peden, Assistant Director of Engineering. So the North Dunn Street was one that we developed in-house, using water meter data, and then what the proposed numbers that IDEM puts out. They publish numbers that, a one-bedroom apartment's going to be 200 gallons per day, so we plug that into the spreadsheet and make assumptions. This is different where we're going to have flow meters in the system to calibrate the model to set it to those existing data versus looking up all the water meter data.
And this budget is inclusive of those flow meters, and they're?
That's
okay.
included, yes.
I saw Grip out downloading the other day. Yeah, I'd never seen that before.
Most of those are downloaded now via self-service, so we don't have to go out manually and download.
Something in the middle of the road. So you said from Weimer, is it that big undeveloped area, both west of Weimer and then also the area north of the Woolery Mill and
It is mainly that area at the Sudbury Farm, which is north of Woolery Mill, all the way to Allen Street. But that also takes all the west side of Bloomington, so if some other properties get developed on the west side of I-69, we would use it for that as well.
And so this is the standard EPA swim model, SWMM model?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, thanks. All my questions.
Anything else?
Just comment that there is a petitioner working through our planning department that filed today for the Sudbury Farm. It's about 180 acres, so there's activity, highly likely, so this modeling will be very helpful to have as
Good to
part of
know.
that. Thanks.
Right.
So we pay up front and then cost share as these people come forward with their plans, just like we've done with the North Dunn development and the development in the old Kmart and.
That is my
With
understanding.
that approach.
Yeah, on the North Dunn Street, we were out in front of that one enough to where we had a construction ready to go. We knew the cost, we knew the engineering cost. This one, we're just at the modeling stage, so we don't have an engineering design or construction cost. So that'll be kind of a complex scenario to go through with the Sudbury Farm, because we're just now doing the modeling. But at least give us a sense if we can approve their waste load allocation letters for their IDEM permit and provide sewer service, because at this point, you know, we don't know if it's gonna cause overflows without the models.
Anything else? Okay, so we will treat these separately, so let's do the first one. Is there a motion to approve the consulting services with Commonwealth for the Dillman project?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Are there any further questions on the Blucher pool? Okay. All right, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great, motion passes. Thank you, Kevin. And Phil. Okay, we're going to go on to old business. Is there any old business from the board? Okay, any old business from staff? New business from the board? Kirk?
Yeah, I think a couple of months ago, we were talking about the impact that taking over the street sweeping operation, what kind of impact that will have on the utilities department and our budget, perhaps. So I think it'd be good if we could ask the staff to pass along to Vic, on our next meeting, an update on the transition plan from City Public Works to utilities, how that's all gonna shake out, the responsibilities that the utilities will have. CBU utilities will, it's equipment, it's labor, it's supervision. And so I guess the question is, we're going to be taking on some new responsibility and some liability here as well. So what's the plan for all those different aspects, whether that's being worked out between civil, city, and utilities, and if there'll need to be budget adjustments, personnel adjustments, what kind of things we need to be communicating to the public for the fall about service, and when the actual transition will occur, whether it's when it's planned, I don't know. So it'll be a new responsibility for us. The reason I bring it up is, a lot of stuff we do, people don't see. You don't see the pipes, you don't see the flow meters, the new plants and things like that, but you sure see the street sweeping. And that's a big issue, not just in the sweeping, but of course the leaf collection has been too. And in a way, if we're sweeping the streets, we're going to be taking care of some leaves too. So anyway, there's a lot to that. We could just ask the staff to tell us how that's coming along. I think we'd all like to know and do our best to help with the transition. Thanks.
I think it's a good idea. I think it's probably, we're due for an update on where we are with that and what's going to be involved. So thanks, Kirk, for bringing that up.
Can I, since you brought it up, just for the third time, state that although I understand this year we're getting compensation from the city, someone needs to be at the table asking for ongoing assistance for the city for their interests in keeping the streets clean, because civil city has interests and utilities has interests, and those are distinct in some ways. We need to keep the streets clean, to keep oils off the streets for public safety purposes. We need to keep the streets clean for sanitation reasons. Those aren't purely utility concerns per se, and just trash, right, and things like that. So When I researched this, it was very clear there was things that were important to the utility. There are other things that would be more important to the city, and it's in my opinion that we should be at the table asking for ongoing assistance from the city as a yearly item in our local agreement. I don't know how everyone else thinks about that.
No, I agree. And I also, to add on to that too, is equipment. I mean, what are we inheriting? What are we, what is the condition of this stuff that we're getting? Is it that the city was already looking at it saying it's got a 5-year lifespan? What are those types of things are we preparing for, and what are those costs going to be? Great. Any other new business from the board? Okay. Thanks, Kirk, for bringing that up. New business from staff? Nothing? All right, subcommittee reports. I don't think we haven't had any subcommittees. Okay. Staff reports?
All right, Catherine Zager, Assistant Director, Environmental. I have a few things to report. First, on May 5th, we did a Hidden River tour, which also encompassed the other parts of Clear Creek that were not recently constructed, but it was really successful. We had 15 attendees and a lot of interest, so it seems like something we could do something similar in the future. And then I wanted to give just a general report on the Clear Creek discharge. There was a press release about it. So on Wednesday, April 26th, CBU was alerted to a discharge into Clear Creek at Grimes that appeared to be raw sewage coming from a hole containing fiber conduit. Upon further inspection, it was discovered that a 24-inch sewer main that ran parallel to the creek had been struck by a fiber line, and it allowed raw sewage to flow to the creek from that boring. We were able to fix the line within 24 hours of the discovery and eliminate this discharge. I would like to take a minute to recognize the staff and departments that helped in our response. First, I would like to thank T&D Assistant Superintendent Justin White for his excellent leadership throughout the response, and Engineering Field Technician Brian Shipley for going above and beyond in helping to provide crucial information for our contractor to be able to repair the main as quickly as possible. I would also like to recognize CBU staff members Holly McLaughlin, Justin Mester, Dan Clarick, Kedrick Harden, Phil Peden, Jay Ramey, Matt Wilson, Matt Dabberton, Mike Runyon, Sam Arthur, Brent Solbrig, Kenny Johnson, Ramon Oritz Sanchez, and Tamala Bruce Riney for all of their assistance during this response. In addition to CBU staff, we were also assisted in our efforts by the Office of the Mayor in drafting a press release to the public, the Department of Parks and Recreation in putting out signs to keep the public out of the creek, City Legal, and the City of Bloomington Engineering Department, who helped obtain contact information for the responsible parties. And I'd be happy to take any questions about it from the board if there are any.
So this was because of the installation of the fiber network?
Yes, so this was because of fiber installation. I'm not sure which project it was related to, but
It wasn't the
I don't believe it was the AEG project.
So
But-
it was not the city project?
No.
Thank you.
It was not.
Jim?
It's an AEG project, but since it said it's not, our question is still the same. Who paid for that?
So the responsible contractor will pay for it. We are paying for it up front, and then charging them.
Will that be reported to the board when you reimbursed and all that?
Absolutely.
That's getting to be pretty common. There's a lot of money getting thrown around and nobody wants to pay for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jeff, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, that line, it just looks very odd that it's installed in that way. Is that an acceptable installation of a line across our stormwater system?
No, it's not.
Is this a temporary thing?
Phil,
or
go ahead.
What's going on here?
Just my, I just want to comment because these pictures are great. Phil Pete, Assistant for Engineering. Each side of this bridge had a 20-inch or greater concrete support system below where the traffic flows there that they cored a 6-inch hole through on each side. So directional boring, you don't have a lot of control where that goes. So they had to most likely have someone in the creek that would have carried that conduit to the other side where they had cored another hole and leave it right on the surface. So I was really surprised that they even considered that as a.
Like a very permanent solution to crossing your creek.
How are they gonna correct it? I mean, what's the correct installation?
So they removed the fiber line. I believe the solution was that they will rebore underneath the creek, which I believe is what is typical. Then as far as how to fix the walls of the bridge, that defers to Monroe County because they own the
Highway
bridge.
Department.
Highway Department, yeah.
Yeah, they were out there as well.
Yes.
They were also trying to get permission to hang the conduit from the top as an option. They've done that in other places.
Trained really well.
Sure is.
Fascinating. All right. Well, very good. I know that this is not one of the projects that, for the city fiber optics, but I know that all of our staff members have been, or I shouldn't say all, but many of our staff members have found some very trying situations in this. We appreciate all of the work that you're doing. It's never fun when you have to fix something that's not your fault. So just keep at it, and I encourage the staff to continue to fight for us to not have to pay for this, because we can obviously get in there and we have the wherewithal and the knowledge to fix these things, but it should not be at our expense or at our ratepayers' expense. So, any other questions or comments on that? Kirk?
Well, I'm glad you're here. I have a technical question I've been trying to figure out because I've seen all kinds of Facebook posts about all these different companies that are doing all this work right now, and they seem to be hitting people's sewer lines. And if these are plastic lines, how does Holy Moly mark plastic sewer line? Can they see it?
All the laterals for the service lines are not being located. So they don't, they're going along. They get the main marked, and then they're supposed to do their due diligence to try to obtain the depth of that to know. But for the most part, the sewer laterals are not marked. And so as a staff, we've met on this several times because it continues to come up. And our concern is that the contractors will be out of town and they'll be gone, and then we'll be getting calls that finally the sewer backed up enough that the homeowner or our customer had an issue. And so we want to make sure that contractor's still liable. So, and then we want to be able to access that information and figure out which contractor it is. In this case, AEG's doing a lot in town. They weren't the culprit in this case. There's so many other fiber companies that are also doing it, as well as other directional boring contractors. Could be for gas, could be for electric. So we're trying to develop a system internally to respond to a strike, a utility strike, and then how we follow up on it. It actually takes quite a bit of time. And what we've learned is the customer really doesn't have the wherewithal to know how to follow up on that for themselves. So, there was an issue with, hey, it's a private line, it's not our line, it's the homeowner's line, they need to follow up. Well, there's only so much they can do. They don't understand the system of trying to find that contractor's information, who permitted that, what part of a city project was it a part of, depending on if it was part of a different project. So all those things came up. We've been talking a lot about it to try to develop a standard procedure and then one that we can follow up for that customer and make sure that we know who the contractor is that's responsible. So we're working on it. We've had several of these.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I mean, there had to be, because I keep reading about it in, these different neighborhood social media groups. Because exactly what you said, we've got a customer that all of a sudden their sewer lateral has been compromised because of a boring under somebody's driveway. So you don't even see it because there's no water's not going to come up out of the ground. There's no pressure behind the sewer line. And as you say, it doesn't manifest itself until the collapse happens and you can't flush anymore. And maybe you've got insurance for that. Maybe you don't. Usually it takes an extra rider for backups. And homeowners don't know that. And as you say, then who do they call? Well, who was that group of people in that unmarked pickup truck from Texas that was digging in my front yard? Who the heck I've got a hole in my front yard right now. It's about 4 feet deep. I looked in it over the weekend, and there's the Indiana gas line as plain as could be. And I'm thinking, good Lord, if they'd have hit that, which they have in our neighborhood. But then I'm thinking, I know where my sewer lateral is when we built the house. And they bored under, yeah, right. So I'm just waiting for, hopefully, not my water to back up.
We've had them hit water mains, then we've got a huge issue. Hitting a gas main would be a big deal. Of course, the sewer into the creek. We've had sewer on a sidewalk from once it was hit. We've had backups in the basements. So there's so many different things that leads to.
In our neighborhood, we had hydraulic fluid from the machinery that they were using dripping all over the sidewalk and the street.
Contaminating the storm sewer and the streams.
I made a report of that, and I would like to thank Vic for helping me to get to the bottom of it.
Maybe since this is happening so much right now because of maybe we should add a page to our website that helps citizens sort this out. What should I do when this happens? Because it may help save our staff a lot of time, because people will, they'll start looking, they'll try to figure out what to do. I'm just thinking if we've got some general guidelines or suggestions for people to follow, because don't most of these contractors have permits to be doing what they're doing?
Yes, they have a right-of-way excavation permit.
So
from city
the first thing you
engineering.
do, if it happened to me, I'd want to know, where do I find that permit? And I would know where in the heck to look. There's no listing in city government for permit locations, and, yeah. What
Yeah, that's a
department
good
would
idea.
that be? Maybe we could do that. You think that would be worth the time?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
Jim?
Yeah, just to follow, I think a lot of the problems with the current, I know it's the city installation of fiber, are not just water issues. I got contacted by 2 different people because their lawns had been torn up and nothing was done to fix it. Nobody told them that someone was coming to do it. They came and they left and they didn't know where to go. And fortunately, in both cases, they were still in the neighborhood. But shouldn't there be a requirement that people are informed that something is going to be done on their property? They have the right, but it seems to
Well,
me...
again, I think this is not a non-issue for it's not our issue for CBU or for the USB to solve this, but we are certainly getting people asking us and assuming that it is part of us.
And it involves us because some of the problems can
The
be.
issue that really affects James's team is that, you say it hit a water main, They're over in a different neighborhood trying to finish up for the day. They've got all their equipment there. There's a 2-week project. They've got another 2-week project after that. They hit this water main. Now suddenly, that whole crew has to mobilize, work overtime, go to this other site, and there's no real charge in our system for that to say this was an emergency response. We had overtime pay to all these employees. We had to mobilize, demobilize. If we look at some of the big projects that we do on a regular basis and we contract out, it's very expensive your mobilization fee and demobilization fee in those contracts is actually a very large number. And so for us to mobilize to those is expensive, and yet there's not a good way to recoup that in our billing process. So that was another component of our internal meetings to try to determine how can we recoup that cost. How can we, because the concern from staff is that the contractor doesn't care. The contractor knows that it's a little expense to them. If we hit it, the utility company comes along, has a fairly cheap, cost to make the repair, and so they'll just hit it and ignore the locates, or so that's a concern. I'm not saying they're all doing that. I'm just saying that's a concern we have as a staff, and trying to figure out how, we figure if the cost is high enough, that might incentivize them to do their due diligence ahead of the drillings.
Megan, did you have something?
Oh, thank you. So in mentioning that this is a problem with other utilities, 2 things. Would there be an opportunity, and I don't know, since maybe they're not so local, but to call up Indiana Gas or somebody, and how do you deal with this in your business when your lines are struck, to see if there are strategies that they use that could be applicable here? And then it sounds like since there are all these other utilities that are also causing issues, maybe if there was an opportunity for like CBU's had our own page, but that's a recommendation we could suggest to the city. Hey, City of Bloomington, we hear about all these other issues besides the CBU strikes, and could they offer a resource for the local utilities for all of city residents to find? Thank you.
Anything else? Jim?
I suggest that since sometimes we're all one, the city and utilities, sometimes we're not. I think that's what I heard. We are or we're not. But maybe we should have CBU, Chris Wheeler, get with Civil City, legal, and figure all this out. There's a lot of things that's been said. One thing with other utilities, those are locatable. And then that shifts responsibility, whether you locate or not. You see, these sewer lines are not. It's my understanding. And they ran through the thing at Second Baptist. We had to change, at my church, we had to cancel service and tear up the sidewalk and all of that. That's why I'm asking about cost. I don't know about all those other things, but this is AEG, and they bore all of that cost. Now, not the inconvenience, but, so that's why I was asking. And there's a lot more companies. That don't look like AEG. That's something we deal with. But I would suggest utilities talk with city legal, and if there's some board concerns.
And I presume we're going to hopefully we'll continue these discussions, and there will be more issues. Does anyone know when the AEG project is supposed to be finished?
I think it was a 2-year time frame from when they started. So I don't recall the start date.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, please.
James, T&D. So we have, is it weekly, Scott, or biweekly? We have some frequency meeting with all city staff and AEG. And then we also have biweekly meetings with AEG and other utilities, so the gas and the other companies, that we talk about issues that we're having with them out in the field. So in those meetings, 2025 is roughly the dates they've talked about. I don't know if that's January or December of 2025, but that is a date they've talked about.
Well, hopefully at these meetings, we're talking at some point about reimbursement to, or some sort of payment for some of the damage that's been caused.
We've talked at length, especially in the citywide meetings, about these sewer issues, and about how we're going to handle them and how they should be done. I don't know if engineering has something on their webpage about a easy click link that goes to, AEG or whoever, and lists their responsibilities. But as Phil was saying, we've had to reach out to AEG and say which contractor was this multiple times to bill these service issues that we've had to go out and deal with. And so,
Great. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Oh, Jeff?
Yeah, does AEG and AT&T and these other companies that are laying fiber and other types of pipe, do they, or cable, do they have to report where they've been and where they're going next? I mean, is that information you guys have asked for?
yeah.
Yeah, we're also involved in some meetings with AEG, and they have their own GIS mapping where we can see generally where the line's gonna go, where they're proposing the
Provide you
line.
access to that. And I'm just wondering, if to follow up on people's interest in getting that information to citizens, is there any way to push that out through one of our portals and get that as a layer so people can see where they've been, and that would help them know who to contact, whether it's AEG or another one of these companies?
Yeah, I don't know if James has an answer. I know that I tried to get it as a shape file to put in our GIS so it overlay with our utilities so we could just see it all in one. Because we're looking at one here, we're looking at
Right.
one, and, it's not as easy if we could just bring the shape file into our own GIS.
So they provided a shape file to us at the very beginning, and what we've found is that shape file is not accurate to what's happening on the ground.
Yeah.
And so I think if it was maybe March, they provided an updated one, I think was like the Blue Ridge area of where they were actually going to, ground truth some of the stuff and where they were going to be at beforehand. And that was the only one. We've been asking for a long time, like, hey, this initial shape file is not correct, because it's just in our locating how long it takes us to do it. We need something a little better to help us locate when you're crossing the street and things of that nature. And they've been somewhat responsive in that. But like I said, the most updated one that we got was, I believe was in March, and it was for the Blue Ridge area, and we haven't received an updated one since then. So we are missing neighborhoods, but the original shape file they sent us is it's okay for the main lines, but where they're actually going to make crossings in the street is not accurate.
Yeah, well, if we can ask them for that, especially where they've been, where they're going, and get that to Chuck or Laura, and I'm sure they can get that out on a public-facing site.
Yeah, and again, I don't know if they're providing that through engineering or ITS downtown. I don't know who is kind of getting that information on that's.
I understand what everybody's saying on this, but this is not our response. This is the city's responsibility to be communicating this out. It is not CBU. I think it's great if we can be helpful with it, but they should be the ones developing the websites, and we are linking to it as a partner in these efforts to say, here's this link.
Easy thing once we get the
Yeah.
shape file.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if engineering or ITS does have something on their public-facing site for
Yeah.
people that have strikes or what. I don't know that for sure.
Well, what you learn is it's not just AEG, so it's all these different contractors. So I think there was a lot of fiber optic contractors that were all trying to beat them to the spot, so that you get a lot of them coming in rapidly trying to lay lines ahead of AEG. And those were the ones that really weren't paying attention to where their lines were going. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I will say for AEG, you're talking about the thing you saw. AEG has been really good, or their contractors have been fairly good about if they can't find one of our service lines or one of our mains, about calling us and asking us to have somebody come out here when they're potholing, because we put it on the line, they will dig a hole with a Vector truck to spot that line before they will dig. And they've been good about that for the most part of calling us. They still, even though they may see it, they still hit it sometimes. But they've been fairly good about it. And like Phil said, there was kind of a race that happened, and some of them were not good about reaching out to us.
Anything else? Okay. Are there any other staff reports?
We have some new CBU employees. So we'd like to welcome Adam Hutzler, Blake McClintock, Samuel Gillespie, Mackenzie Godsey, Foster Tiller and Jimena Martinez to our team. We also have some folks who earned certifications. So we'd like to congratulate Kaylee Bollinger and Jason Lasher. They both received their wastewater operator class 1 certification. We'd also like to congratulate Paul Edwards, Bradley Elkins, and Perry Langanoir for receiving their DSL certification. We also had 14 staff members get their adult first aid, CPR, and AED certifications. Yep.
A lot of good things happening. Good. Anything else? No?
No, that
That's it?
concludes my staff
Okay.
report.
So are there any petitions or communications from anyone else? All right.
I had one thing I was going to say. I just want to thank whoever has installed our new screen here today. This is great to see, and thank you. That we've been excitedly anticipating that. So thank you.
And I also would like to thank, we were talking about what some of the groups are doing in terms of notifying the residents. We're having a big project happening in our neighborhood, and there was a lovely letter that came to everybody in the neighborhood and told us what was going to be happening and how they have how long the project's going to be, and if there's questions to contact Vic. So I applaud you guys. When I talked to Holly about it, she said this is customary, what we do when we're working in the neighborhood. So kudos to everybody for keeping us informed. So appreciate it. All right. So if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
All right, meeting adjourned.